So, hey guys, we're glad to have you here. So, the guest we have for today is Grace Ling. She's a UX and product designer at Electronic Arts, and apart from that, she's the founder and the design lead in Design Buddies, a community which is 14K members strong. So, the ACM team came up with this talk because we engineers tend to focus on getting the work done at most times. We don't try to think of the end user or think about how the designing of the end product is going to be. So that's why we thought we'll have someone expert in UI UX come in and give some tips on design thinking and how to structure your projects better. So over to you, Grace. Glad to have you
Cool.
here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Let me just share my screen for our presentation. Window. Cool. Cool. So
Let's
hello,
go.
everyone. I'm Grace. I'll get started. Throughout this whole presentation, I'll be asking y'all some questions in the chat, so feel free to engage as well, and also be taking questions from the chat. So I have a chat. I have like basically a really huge monitor, so I'll see your questions in the chat as I'm going through. And for the presentation, I'll be going over a brief overview of design and how you guys can apply design to your career in life. Most of you are computer programmers, and also how I personally got into design and some learning and journey elements I learned along the way. So let's get started. And so today I'll start with a brief introduction, and I'll talk about design and what design is and how to apply design thinking to all projects, something I always do really common in industry. And then I'll talk more about UX design, what it is, and UI design, and then careers and resources, and this little story about how I personally got into design. And so I'm a designer at Electronic Arts. I mostly focus on UX and product design. At times, I also do graphic and branding design for internal groups and events and marketing material. I also founded a large design community called Design Buddies, so you're welcome to join the Discord link over there. I'm also actually a computer science and engineering student at Santa Clara University. I'm a grad student, so I decided to take on a full-time role while being in school. And I'm from California, specifically Silicon Valley's San Francisco Bay Area. It's about 7:50 p.m. my time right now, Sunday night. And for fun, I have a lot of random side hustles. I have my own art business where I make merchandise to table at anime conventions, and I'm also really into social media and blogging, creating content to help designers, students, and community builders. So really love doing a lot of different things, but mostly design. So that's what we'll be talking about today. And let me know in the chat what your major is, assuming you're all students. Like, are you studying computer science, information technology, or design, or what you're most curious in learning about in design, so I can make sure to address them in my presentation. And so really brief overview of my journey. I'll be going over more later during this presentation and talking about some of the learnings that I learned along the way. I started as an anime artist, grew up wanting to draw manga and design games, also was really into social media and blogging and running cross-country and track competitively and having a lifestyle blog around that. And then coming into college, I started undergrad in 2015. So I was a bioengineering major actually. So that was my college major. I really wanted to become a neurosurgeon with the MD PhD. But after learning the hard way that I shouldn't do things just for my resume, I decided to go into game design and computer science instead and minored in that during my undergrad. So I graduated my undergrad June 2019, and then I started grad school right after. But while I was doing game design and development, I realized I liked level design and the UX part of it more, so I decided to focus on that instead. Around the same time, I also started my own art business and started Design Buddies last April 2020. And since then, it accumulated over 14,000 members from over the world, including a large population of members actually from India. And so we have people from all time zones chiming in the chat on Discord too, which is super cool. And so now I'll talk about briefly what design is and how you can apply it to your life. So quickly, what do you guys think design is in the chat so I can see? Do you think, I won't give any examples, so I just want to know what you think in the chat. So feel free to type in the chat. Give it a few seconds more. Well, so design is essentially a problem solving in an iterative process. So it's not definitely solving problems. A big misconception is that design is art, but in fact, they're kind of the opposite. art is about expressing yourself, how you're feeling, your emotions, your thoughts, and design is about solving problems of that tied to real world problems that exist out there. It's definitely a process of imagining and planning creation of an object. Yeah, a lot of planning involved and a lot of imagining different solutions you can create. So the purpose of it is specifically UX and product design is create user experiences, and product the field I'm in mostly focus on digital experiences. So this could be mostly app design, web design, experience. It's called experience design, where my kind of career falls under. And always iterative, so you try to solve problems and you collect a lot of feedback around the user. That's why the user experience. So you do a lot of user testing, collect feedback, and iterate, and keep improving your product along the way to making sure that you're solving the problem to the best of its ability while balancing business goals. And so this is what design is, and art is about expressing yourself. So it's not art, it's design. And so you might have seen this before. How many of you guys seen design thinking or this something similar, this 5-step process before in the chat? You start with emphasizing, so understanding the problem. Awesome. Yeah, it's very, very common, seen in a lot of presentations and textbooks, but this is essentially what design thinking is. And I'll break it down to some actionable things you guys can take away for your own projects as well as software engineers. And so you want to really understand the problem first, and then I'll have more examples later in my presentation as well. But you really want to understand the problem, really, really understand and collect data and validate that problem, and then define what problem or explore that problem space and define what problem you want to solve, and then think of solutions to it, and then make a prototype, and then test it out, and then ship it. And so it's a very iterative process that I go through in a lot of companies, especially in the Bay Area, and also over the world. A lot of tech companies go through this when they're developing new products, and it typically involves a lot of designers, user researchers, software engineers, all the engineers and product managers all involved in this whole design thinking process. That's why if anybody has any say in a product, that's why it's super, super important to know about design thinking. And so design about solving problems. So feel free to give some examples of what kind of problems you face every day, whether it's alarm clock or I know right now in the pandemic, all the hospital beds are pretty empty and a lot of places are closed, at least in America. But yeah, let me know in the chat. And then these are just some problems we can solve, like some examples that you can solve with design. Well, some examples are like healthcare system exhaustion. Yes, definitely requiring multiple steps to access some most used functions. This is so true. I can relate to this in the fact that there's like so many messaging apps out there. Like on every social media account I have, there's like a messaging option, but there's no way to really see all the messages in one place. I mean, there's maybe some apps in that, but the ones I've tried are pretty laggy. And so definitely can relate to that as well, Omkar. So yeah, so just some examples of problems you can solve with design is healthcare system exhaustion, not enough hospital beds, at least in America, remote working, how we want to stay connected and productive, and how to run remote workshops, and small business closures, how you want to keep business afloat while maintaining social distancing guidelines. At least in America, everything's closed right now. So this is kind of geared towards like where I'm living, but these are just some examples of problems that people are currently facing. And so UI and UX design is different. I like to think of it as a human body. So UX is kind of like a skeleton, everything that kind of connects everything together, all the flows like wireframes, prototype, information architecture, how information is related to each other with hierarchy. And then UI is skin, the skeleton is skin, and how look and feel, like colors, typography, where you involve the graphic designers and all that. So UX is mostly experience, and UI is mostly how it look and feel and how it ties to the branding overall. But they work very, very closely with each other. As a designer in industry, as a product designer, I have to consider both UX and UI design. They're equally as important. They both have their own value to it. So, but they're both different. So when you're talking to people, like these two are widely different fields, but they work very, very closely with each other. So now I'll talk about design thinking a little bit more about what I do and how to apply design thinking to your everyday life and to all your projects. Again, I'm showing this, but in reality, it's like this. It's definitely it's an iterative process, as I mentioned in the beginning. Every time you move forward, you want to evaluate, collect data, get feedback, and then based on the feedback, you might need to go back and reevaluate again and keep improving your product. And so you have an idea, and then you ideate, and you prototype it, and then you found out that you're missing a crucial piece. Let's say users are not understanding how to use your app, or users are not understanding the purpose of your app. then you need to go back and probably explore that prototype, explore that problem space more, or redesign the flow and information architecture of your app in the ideate phase. So it really, really depends, but you definitely have to keep going back. It's not a linear journey. It's more like a circular journey, because even if you ship the product and you find some data that the customers are missing or some business goal not met, then you want to go back in time or go back to the process and reevaluate your goals and re-understand the problem space even more to keep improving your product. So it's never linear. It starts with understanding and exploring the process and materializing it, and then evaluating at each step and going back if necessary. And so for this example I'll be using is actually the first ever case study I've done. How many of you guys use Discord in the chat? Like, do you prefer Discord or Slack? Feel free to chime in the chat. And this is actually a project for my first ever product design class where I was given an app. Oh, awesome. I love Discord as well. Discord is better. Do you guys like Discord or Slack more? Let me know in the chat. Oh, awesome. Yeah, Discord is much better. That is awesome to hear. Yeah, Design Buddies is actually created on Discord. I'm so glad everyone says Discord. That makes me happy. I don't want to work for the company, but I just really like the app. So hence I chose that for my case study. And so this is an example I'll be showing you guys for my design thinking process and how I ideated a solution to that. And this was actually a project, my first product design class, where we picked an app and found a pain point and tried to ideate a solution and design a solution for that. So yeah, I designed bookmarks. So first, you want to empathize, like really, really understand, and you want to validate everything with data. And so this is super, super important because especially working in a company, you want to really convince leadership and your product managers and stakeholders to really understand that this is an actual problem. We need to design a product for that. And so this is when you need to pull up some user research data, some market research data to really validate and prove that it's actually a problem, not just like, oh, I feel like it's a problem. Design is not subjective, it is really objective, and it should be everything you design and every problem space or every hypothesis should be backed by data. It's also a human-centered process, so you definitely want to have external information, external feedback, and not just saying like, oh, I want to do this, I want to like color this app blue because I like blue, or instead like, I want to color this app blue because blue symbolizes loyalty and trust, and our product is we want to trust users, just like things like that. It has to be backed by research, not just like, oh, I feel like it should be something. It should be backed by data and ultimately drive decisions. And this is really, really important as anybody working in tech to defend your decisions when talking with different stakeholders, product managers, or leadership. And so this is my example. So if you see this badge here, this means it's my Discord project example. And yeah, it looks like all of you know what Discord is. But the pain point I found was that it's hard to keep track of messages. Like, how many of you guys feel that way in Discord? Like, everything is just kind of going all over the place. And there's like no threads. It's like really hard to tell what's going on. If you don't check the app for a few days, you feel like you miss a lot, and things like that. And yeah, so that's what kind of inspired the problem space I wanted to explore, is that pain point I found through myself, my own experiences, and also interviewing other people. And yeah, so that was like the empathize phase. And how I would expand the problem space more is I'll ask a lot of who, what, when, where, why questions. Like, who are the users, what they need? Again, it's a human-centered process, so really, really trying to understand the users and how does this product fulfill their need. And also, without money, the business won't be a business. So we also need to make sure when you're designing something or building any product, it has to meet a business goal. And so as a designer, I'm always trying to balance both user needs and business goals, because without the users, they won't buy the product. And without the business, without buying the product, the business won't succeed. So you definitely want to try to satisfy both. And that's why you see like ads in different websites and just things like that designed on the website. And you also need to do some market research, seeing what other similar products also solve this problem, doing some competitive analysis so you're not reinventing something that already exists out there. And these are just some of the examples I personally asked during my interview to validate my problem statement during my empathize phase. Like, how do you feel? Like, do you check all your app mentions? Like, how many times you check this for a day? And like, why? So try to ask questions to get people to tell me like what is important to them, and like kind of like help me kind of guide what kind of feature to design for it. And just like thinking what information do they see is important, like without looking at Discord, what information can you recap, things like that. And then, yeah, gathering data to validate your problems is also really, really important. And do this through basically user interviews and surveys for user research. So this is actually typically done by UX researchers from industry, UX researchers on my team. And we also review existing products and aligning with stakeholders, also identifying metrics in the beginning. How would you measure success? What are your KPIs and things like that? And also work with engineering to establish technical limitations at the beginning, to making sure that technologies at this idea and this product can be feasible with its current technology and current bandwidth with the engineers, and currently fit into the whole product timeline. So it's a very collaborative process where all designers, researchers, product managers, and engineers get involved to make sure that all the deadlines are met. And these are some metrics that I've set myself for my Discord project, like user satisfaction, like are they more satisfied after the bookmarks have been implemented? Are they able to complete the task, like because of the new bookmark feature I designed, are they able to use the app and things like that? And how they spend time, like because this bookmark feature is implemented, do they spend more time in the app because they like it more, if they find it more useful, or they refer more people to using the app if the bookmark feature is implemented because they like it so much. And they're just like some metrics you can use to measure success of the app and to measure how successful your idea is and ultimately validate things. So second step of design thinking, after empathize, we're defining here. We definitely want to put together all this information you've gathered, all the pain points, and notice everything, and then narrow everything down to a problem statement that you're trying to solve. So this is kind of like a thesis of the statement, your thesis of your product, what you're trying to solve. And also, yeah, these are just some of the insights I found from my user research that ultimately guided me to the main user problem of it's hard to keep up with messages on Discord. I'll hence draw with my solution to design a bookmarks feature to help it well, it's a design, so it helped make it easier for users to keep up messages so they can bookmark it. And so you might have also seen this. How many of you guys in the chat seen this double diamond diagram before? And so what this is you definitely want to keep diverging and converging. So this is like the empathize phase when you start with the problem space, and when you're exploring it, you're interviewing a lot of users, finding a lot of insights, and trying to think of the right problem you're trying to solve. Oh, cool, it's the first time, awesome. Yeah, it's a common way of thinking as well, the converge and diverge system. And after you want to have all this data from user researching, you want to converge into what problem statement. So this is so now that you determine what exactly problem statement you want to solve, you definitely, next step is to think of solutions, different ways of solving that problem. And yeah, so this is after gather all the data and narrow it down. So in design, you always want to have as many options as possible and choose the best one. That's why you want to keep diverging and converging and evaluating all your choices to make sure that the one you're choosing is the best one to ability to actually solve the problem. So this is one of the idea. You think of you think of a bunch of like how might we questions, like how might we make it easier for people to keep track of messages? How might we like implement a bot? How might we educate users? Just things like that. Definitely think outside the box. And this is typically done in a group setting. And if you have seen any stock photos of designers with a bunch of sticky notes in their back, this is what they're doing. They're thinking of their ideating solutions, they're doing affinity mapping and all that good stuff. At the end, this is the brainstorming phase. We have a bunch of sticky notes, and at the end, you definitely want to vote and converge on a few ideas, prototype, and test out yourself. So again, we're diverging again, trying to evaluate all the solutions and then all the possible choices of solutions and picking the best one to move forward with. And so now we're here. After this is all the sticky notes on the wall, and then after you voted on a few, you converge on a solution you wanted to solve. And so after you pick a few, you want to prototype it, which are kind of click-through and Figma prototypes where they're basically end product simulations, not the actual thing, but similar to the actual things you can test out with the users. And this is just basically investigating solutions. So acting like a scientist, having hypotheses, thinking, oh, if you design this, that means the user would find it easier to do something. And this also helps you guide usability testing. So helps you gather information and once you use a prototype to test it out, you can gather data such as constraints in the app, some problems, and have a deeper understanding of how users react, feel, and behave. And you really start with low fidelity diagrams like sketches to really just highlight the initial layout, the hierarchy of content, how the flow is, different use cases and edge cases, things like that. So this is what my low fidelity sketch looked like. I did this on my iPad. I basically fit the bookmark in the existing flow where you can like toggle options with your messages, and wrote a lot of notes and annotations for that too. And this is when you get into UI design. You want to, after you kind of have the whole flow information architecture down, you want to think of how you want it to look on the app itself. So this is when I go into Figma. Basically, make everything digital. So you can think of this as paper and pencil. And after you narrow down the flow, discuss with people, you want to do digitally. The reason why I want to start with paper is that it's very easy to make a lot of really quick iterations. Once you go digital, it takes more time and resources to be able to make iterations. So definitely want to start low fidelity first and explore as many options as you can, and then make it digitally, just because time is a resource as well. And so this is me making some explorations in Figma, making it look like Discord and things like that, and having different flows of where I fit in the bookmarks and everything. And these are just some examples of prototyping tools. I personally like Figma the most. There's a lot of pros and cons to all of it, but I'm not sponsored by Figma, but I like Figma the most. Just because you can collaborate in live and collaborate easily with developers and also collaborate with other designers pretty easily. I also made all my slides in Figma too. These are XD, Sketch, and Vision and Prototype. They all have their own strengths and weaknesses. And after you created your prototype, which is the fake version of your app, that just like designed and screens together, you want to test it out. And the goal is to really find the best solution. You want to test out multiple prototypes, do some A/B testing and things like that. You want to explore your hypothesis, how you think users will behave, and then collect more data to drive iterations. And the goal of just like testing is super important, is to really understand users, refine the problem even more, and just like keep iterating. Yeah, designers are a design buddy I met before, and yeah, they saw my case study and it's a really just stuff like that. Great that. Oh, am I muted? Oh wait, can you hear me again? I was muted for some reason. Let me know in the chat if you can hear me. I think I
we
actually
can hear
pressed.
you, Grace. For a
Oh, wait,
second, your
perfect.
audio was distorted. Now it's back.
Oh, okay, perfect.